It was not written in any public order. It was not announced to allies or enemies. It existed only in locked rooms and sealed folders. A decision moved forward without signatures, without witnesses. And when the war ended, no one spoke of it again. By 1943, Germany was already fighting from a position of strain. The Eastern Front consumed entire divisions. Allied bombing raids struck industrial centers almost nightly. Rail networks were damaged faster than they could be repaired. Inside the state apparatus, pressure replaced confidence. In response, secrecy intensified. Information was no longer shared freely, even within the military hierarchy. Orders were fragmented. Responsibilities were divided. Knowledge itself became a controlled resource. This environment allowed unconventional decisions to take shape without resistance. Within Germany's central command structure, a small coordination group was granted exceptional authority. It operated under direct supervision and outside standard reporting channels. Its task was not to win battles at the front. It was to restructure internal military and industrial coordination in anticipation of prolonged instability. The plan they developed was never formally named. It did not appear in standard operational directives. It existed as a series of instructions passed verbally or through temporary documents. Once read, many were destroyed. Others were never archived. The core principle was isolation. Certain military units were removed from documented command chains. Their redeployment was disguised as routine logistics. Rail movements were scheduled at night. Unit identifiers were altered or omitted. Even local commanders were given only partial explanations. Industrial facilities deemed sensitive were quietly reassigned new classifications. Air defense priorities shifted without public justification. Training centers were emptied and relocated. Personnel with specialized knowledge were transferred abruptly, sometimes without replacement. This system relied on strict compartmentalization. No single officer outside the core group understood the full scope of the plan. Each participant acted on incomplete information. Questions were discouraged. Written confirmation was rare. The decision to exclude Allied leadership and even Axis partners was deliberate. German authorities believed information leaks were inevitable. Neutral intermediaries. Diplomatic channels. Intelligence penetration. Secrecy was seen as the only remaining safeguard. From the outside, Germany's internal movements appeared disorganized. From within, they followed a rigid internal logic. A parallel structure had formed. One that operated alongside the visible war effort. And once initiated, it began to move on its own momentum. This was the beginning of a command that left no clear record. Only traces. And silence. As 1943 continued, the hidden structure began to expand beyond its original scope. What had started as limited internal coordination slowly transformed into a parallel system of command. Instructions bypassed conventional chains. Authority was implied rather than stated. Compliance was expected without explanation. Regional commanders noticed irregularities. Supply routes were altered without notice. Units were reassigned with no operational justification provided. Requests for clarification were delayed or ignored. In some cases, officers received contradictory orders from different departments, each claiming higher priority. The system depended on speed and silence. Verbal orders replaced written ones. Meetings were brief. Documentation was temporary. Once instructions were carried out, records were destroyed or left incomplete. This protected secrecy but weakened consistency. Compartmentalization increased tension. Officers understood their immediate tasks but lacked strategic context. Decisions that appeared irrational at the local level were part of a broader, unseen design. This gap between action and understanding created friction within the military structure. At the same time, the war situation deteriorated. Allied bombing intensified. Industrial output fluctuated. Transportation networks became unreliable. These pressures forced constant adjustments to the hidden plan, adjustments that could not be communicated openly. As a result, coordination suffered. Some units arrived too late to fulfill their intended role. Others waited for instructions that never came. Parallel departments unknowingly duplicated efforts. Resources were consumed without visible results. Allied intelligence began to detect inconsistencies. Aerial reconnaissance revealed unexplained night movements. Intercepted communications referenced unfamiliar administrative designations. However, without captured documentation or clear patterns, these anomalies were interpreted as signs of internal disorder rather than deliberate concealment. Inside Germany, trust within the command structure eroded. Mid-level officers adapted by improvising. Some delayed action, fearing consequences. Others followed orders mechanically, without understanding their purpose. The system relied on discipline, but uncertainty weakened it. Despite these problems, the hidden command persisted. Its planners believed exposure would be more dangerous than inefficiency. Secrecy remained a priority, even as operational effectiveness declined. By late 1943, the structure was under strain. External pressure increased. Internal coherence weakened. The hidden plan continued to function, but only just. It was moving toward a point where silence alone would no longer hold it together. The collapse did not come with a single event. It came through accumulation. By late 1943, the hidden command was operating under conditions it had not been designed to survive. The war situation changed faster than secrecy could adapt. Allied advances accelerated. Bombing raids struck transportation hubs critical to internal coordination. Rail junctions were destroyed. Communication centers went silent. The concealed system depended on precise timing, and that timing began to fail. Key personnel were lost. Some were killed during air raids. Others were captured during sudden frontline breakthroughs. A few disappeared during chaotic redeployments. Their replacements lacked context. The fragments of knowledge they carried could not be reconstructed. Orders stopped arriving. Or they arrived too late. In several regions, units waited for instructions that never came. In others, outdated directives were followed blindly, leading to misallocation of resources. The separation between the visible command structure and the hidden one became unmanageable. As central authority weakened, conflicts emerged. Field commanders prioritized immediate survival. Administrative departments attempted to enforce obsolete instructions. No clear mechanism existed to resolve these contradictions. The parallel system fractured under stress. Materials prepared under the hidden plan were abandoned. Some facilities were overrun before evacuation could be completed. Sensitive equipment was destroyed hastily or left intact. Documents were burned without verification. In several cases, destruction was incomplete. When Allied forces advanced into these areas, they encountered confusion. Inconsistent defenses. Unexplained infrastructure changes. Scattered remnants of administrative planning. But no comprehensive evidence of the hidden command itself. Interrogations produced fragmented accounts. Officers spoke of orders without signatures. Units without origin. Transfers without destination. No one could describe the entire structure, because no one had ever seen it whole. As Germany's command structure disintegrated, the hidden plan lost its final protection. Not exposure, but irrelevance. It dissolved into the general collapse of authority. There was no final order to terminate it. No acknowledgement of failure. The system simply ceased to function. What remained were absences, gaps in records, movements without explanation, decisions without attribution. The climax passed without recognition. The hidden command ended not in revelation, but in disappearance. There was no formal conclusion to the plan, no closing order, and no final report that acknowledged its existence. When the war shifted and command structures collapsed, the plan did not transition or adapt. It remained suspended, without ownership, without explanation. Administrative offices were abandoned as they stood. Desks were left covered with unfinished work. Filing cabinets stood open, emptied of the materials that once defined authority. Some documents were destroyed deliberately. Others were removed in haste. Most simply vanished without record. The individuals involved gradually disappeared from the historical trace. Some were reassigned into unrelated roles. Others were captured or killed as the front moved rapidly across Germany. A few survived the war but never spoke publicly about their involvement. Their responsibilities were never clarified, and their decisions were never formally reviewed. After the collapse, investigators and administrators attempted to reconstruct what had taken place. Instead of clear patterns, they encountered gaps. Rail movements appeared without corresponding orders. Military units lacked identifiable origins. Facilities showed signs of reclassification and relocation with no supporting documentation. These irregularities produced questions, but not answers. The absence of records made verification impossible. The absence of witnesses made interpretation uncertain. Over time, interest faded as priorities shifted toward reconstruction and accountability elsewhere. The parallel command structure left no signature. It did not defend itself through documents or testimony. It offered no justification and required no closure. It simply ceased to exist. As years passed, archives were reorganized and simplified. Surviving fragments were filed under unrelated categories. Context was lost. Connections dissolved. What had once been deliberate concealment became accidental erasure. The plan was not forgotten through intent. It disappeared through neglect, silence, and fragmentation. Histories of the war focused on battles, leaders, and decisive moments. This plan belonged to none of those narratives. It had no name, no clear beginning, and no visible conclusion. When the war ended and the world moved forward, the plan remained behind, incomplete and unexplained, leaving only absence where certainty should have been. And in that absence, it was forgotten. Thank you for watching. New historical stories are published regularly.